Well, welcome to another session here at the Global Virtual Expo Mind, Body, Business. And we have a wonderful speaker, Ashley Carroll, an executive advisor to entrepreneurial leaders with vision. Now, Ashley has been around for over 20 years and traveling 20 countries in that time. So, a really exciting background. She comes in when businesses hit a crossroad, whether that's scaling up, shifting direction, or navigating uncertainty. Her sharp insights and candid perspective and creatively efficient lens, she guides these entrepreneurs and founders to lead with clarity, integrity, heart in the most complex moments from personal experience and a whole range of experience with working with that entrepreneurial background founders, as we said. Ashley, hello and welcome to this session.
Hi, Sigrid. Thank you. Nice to be here.
It is great to have you here. Your vast and varied background. Let's ask you on that one. I am curious. So, traveling 20 countries, different backgrounds there in those areas, and 20 years of experience working with leadership at all the different levels. Do you make a connection there that your traveling has contributed to this whole area and idea of working with vision, with visionary leaders? Is there a connection, Ashley?
Between traveling and having, or just the work you do,
Yes.
yeah, of course, always, yeah. Travel make is really been one of the most impactful experiences. There's some key examples I could give you, high level examples of things that have really changed my life, and travel is one of those, one of the top like three or five. I don't know, I have to write a list properly now. But travel creates a big a difference in experience, right? And that creates humility a lot of times for you, depending where you're traveling and what you're doing, right? Because you could travel to a little island, stay in a hotel the whole time, or you could travel and work with farmers in rural parts of Africa, right? So it can be like a very different experience, and then you can get a very different outcome and impact to your own individual persona. And then ideas, certainly for business and vision. So has that impacted me? Definitely, in my own business and my own personal experience, and helping me kind of vision and think about things quite differently. It made a really big difference, frankly, in how I thought about running business and interacting with different components of the business, and how to really push for goals and what goals make sense and are helpful for everyone, not just maybe the individual.
Mm. And I can imagine that being on those different countries, different countries and different continents, of course, getting the backgrounds there, it's allowed you to really create solutions, work towards solutions to any kind of problem with any type of person you are working with, professional you are working with, entrepreneur you are working with. You have really powerful assets from that background. You are, for example, definitely offering, first of all, a safe space that you can challenge the clients you're working with, challenge their old ways and get them to embrace new thinking. Is there an example that perhaps jumps to mind that you could share with us? What are or has been maybe
Yeah.
really outdated thinking?
Yeah, I can think of an example that popped in my head when you were asking the question, Sigrid, related to your point during travel. So previously, I used to do a lot of work, or some work, in lower income countries. I actually really like experiencing lower income countries personally, and so I happened to be in Ghana one time. I've been to Ghana twice, but this was the first trip I had been there, and I had a project. So it was international development. It was a project about we were working with the education department of the country. And so we were finishing up some work there and I was helping close it out at the time. And I was in a different role at that point in my career. But one of the things, we had a task that we had to get done. So we had a car that we bought and we had to get it. But we hadn't, it was a short project. We hadn't received it yet. And there were some issues, right? So the problems arose. There's always an opportunity to work through a problem, usually on a daily basis in life. So this was the opportunity for me that day. So I was with my Ghanaian colleagues, just me, right? And then I'm originally from the United States of America. So coming as American in Ghana, no one else there, right? Everyone else is Ghanaian. And so we go to the dealership. So it was a Toyota dealership where we are getting the car, and we go to the dealership. They said, okay, we have to go to the dealership to talk to them to get it, right? So they're going back and forth and they're speaking in local language, not even English, right? They're going back and forth and they're speaking in front of me about different things. And I could just feel it wasn't going well, right? I didn't have to understand because I didn't understand the language. I didn't have to understand it, but I could feel, okay, this is not, we're not getting to that solution as easily as I was hoping to, right? So I was like, okay, what can I do? What can I do? And so I, like, in my head, I'm the whole time I think I'm strategizing in my head of like, okay, how can I get them to release this car so we can close this project and move on? Because I have to go back to States, right? I have to leave. I have a flight coming up. And so I came up with something in my head and I, let myself kind of flow into like communicating that. And I said to them, I kind of gave them some change in perspective and, clarity for like why and kind of, trying to convince them for why they would do it. Anyways, nevertheless, we end up getting the car. Sigrid, that later that I think it was that same exact day we got the car. So, we were all, of course, going in together. It wasn't like just me, right? It was me plus my Ghanaian colleagues going in and kind of creating this combined atmosphere that ultimately led to somehow convincing them to do it, right? We had different terms. They didn't agree with our terms. We had our own, et cetera, right? So there's more to the story, obviously, in detail there. But that's like a huge example for me. And that was one of the most nerve-wracking. I was so nervous to go there. And then I was like, what am I going to say to them? I have, I'm responsible for doing this and I have to get it done and I have to leave the country. So how am I going to do this? But that was a really impactful experience for me. And like, how do I communicate? What is the culture? Like I'm thinking all those things through, right? As I'm in the room with them, talking with them, like feeling their energy. I literally like put myself in that energy, like in their style of communication, because Ghanaian style of communication is not the same, I'll tell you, as general, American, someone from the United States. So it's not the same at all. It's a quite different culture. So I had to like kind of put myself in that culture and that way of communicating, which was actually uncomfortable for me because of my own programming and life and experience. But, I had to like kind of sit with it. And that's ultimately part of, right, what led us to that solution of receiving it. But that story I'll never forget. It was very interesting. Oh, you're muted, Sigrid.
I can imagine, especially in a completely different culture from the one that you are back. And that really makes it so powerful now for your clients to work with you, having those experiences, having been around for a while and experienced, aside from just business connections, what else there is out there. And it's already actually taking me to the next question that I want to ask you about, identifying what the root causes are, because sometimes people are looking for solutions. They just want a kind of a quick fix, as we say. But to identify what really is behind something, to then deliver the clear, exact strategies, and not just let's fix it, but what actually brought us to this point that we now need to have a look at what is a new clear direction and strategy. You have personal experience in that area as well, from your own experience, as well as with working with people in this area. How do you go about when you find looking to find root causes? Is there a particular way that you go about that, Ashley? Special questions you ask? How does that work?
Yeah, good question. There's many frameworks or tools or processes that you can use, especially depending who you're with and how many people are there and what's your goal and what's the problem you're trying to solve and what's the challenge. So there's so many opportunities or options, I should say, dependent, like let's say on the scenario that you're in. This might it's about I'll tell you for me, Sigrid, kind of what helps me get there is my brain. I have this brain. We all have, of course, we're born, right? And we all have these wonderful gifts. They're different or they're similar. Who knows? It depends who you are. Maybe it's different, maybe it's not. So I think I got a brain that is able to do this. And obviously it didn't just happen overnight. So it's my whole life of doing tons of critical thinking and really like strategic thinking and processes around kind of like digging down in the detail, like asking, continuing to ask the questions to get to the core of something. Like if you could just an easy thing is to just keep asking why. Like why I'm doing, why that, why, like you just you can dig down into it. That's an easy way, or as an example, I should say, of a way to do it. But my
Mm.
brain just a lot of times does it, Sigrid. And I will go I'll be talking to someone about all this super complicated stuff, and then it comes to me. Honestly, I just know what questions to ask. Like I don't know how to explain that to you. I just know, like it's just there, and it's like the connection that we've been talking about, maybe that's there. But I just have this super curious mind. I have spent so much time on questioning and critical thinking from a very young age. Like I was literally trained into doing that. So
Mm.
honestly, it's just over 30 years of experience of training my mind and thinking and utilizing critical thinking skills. But now I can just sort of get to the core of things. Like I'll meet, let's say I meet with someone, they have a problem, and I'm like, oh, they'll bring it up, right? And I bring them, I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. And I like, I just ask them a question and it unravels into
Mm.
ultimately, usually a really simple solution, to be honest, or a really simple root cause, or really simple, it's generally really simple. But what the problem is, actually doing that exercise to get to that, like not stopping yourself, not creating that barrier of yourself. A lot of times I found in business, like people are not willing to, they're not aware of it, or they're not willing to recognize it and speak about it. And that's where really getting to the root cause and figuring things out is actually what makes change that you want to happen. There's so many times in business I work with people where they want something to, I want this vision, but they never get to the real direct root truth of what's happening and why they're not achieving that. And you just spend years in this cycle of like, I'm gonna try this. So how wonderful, I did this. I'm gonna speak about it in the company, but like the underlying behavior, the underlying problem just maintains. And I've seen it over and over again. To be honest, it would drive me nuts at different points in my career working. And I was just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But I mean, for me, I mean, there's so many, like using the why questions, for example, there's so many tools or options in order to bring you there, Sigrid. But for me personally, and why I decided to kind of move into this area is honestly over 30 years of training my brain into critical thinking, and also realistically being born with just a strategic brain of thinking, right? So that's what helps me personally get to it, which is so many years of work and
Practice.
experience
Yeah.
changing and development. But
In a way,
yeah.
it's practicing what you have built in somewhere there. So I really hear that. You are very coming from a very practical and personal experience background, which makes it so powerful working with you and gives you the power and the ability to work with clients in that way. And as somebody says, most people, we do have answers inside ourselves, but drawing them out does take someone on the outside. And that is what I'm hearing you are certainly focusing on from your own experience from the person you are and you have become, I would say, with the way of asking about it at the time with each person differently, to really draw that out, because we do need to know what is there at the time, what it's all started with, in order to find a different or a solution, which you've just shared. That's really good to know, and thanks for sharing that in that way. But it also highlights to me, as you are sharing that, your own curiosity about things. So curiosity about life, about yourself, and of course about the clients, the people that you're working with. So the curiosity then allows you to use storytelling, as what you have shared with me previously. Share some of that with our audience today. Curiosity and storytelling that bridges understanding between people and levels, and what they are looking for. Tell us a bit about that. What does that look like?
Yeah, good question, Sigrid. And I should say, I am joining you from Costa Rica. I should have said that with your question on travel. I thought about that. So I'm currently in Costa Rica talking with you in Australia, which is so amazing, so far away, but so close at the moment. Um, so curiosity, yes. I guess, since I'm born, I have so curious, like the most curious. I was literally made fun of as a child, like even as a teenager, probably in my 20s, even. I don't know. I've been made fun of so many times for asking questions. So curiosity is a huge part of what we were just talking about in the last question, but curiosity is a big part of my life where I just am very curious of learning and knowing and understanding. So if you can put yourself in a place of learning and wanting to learn and know, expand, that's going to bring that curiosity to you kind of naturally, automatically, right? But you have to be there, right? You have to be in a place where you're kind of open and interested in things to be different and things to be new, because that's kind of and change, because that's kind of required in terms of curiosity to kind of bring you along with a goal. Um, so that's the curiosity you said you wanted me to speak to. And sorry, what was the other, Sigrid?
But how that curiosity then leads you to, using storytelling, because you're
Yeah,
bridging that understanding of people and levels and what you're working on. So leading that into storytelling. It's not necessarily that you are telling stories. I don't mean it in that way. And I think you
right.
know what I mean. I think it's more about using that ability to bring it into a storytelling arena for working with somebody on what they need to learn when they are with you.
Right. So curiosity is a big part of getting to the what are you going to do, right? What's going on and what am I going to do about it?
Yeah.
And then storytelling is how you would communicate that to what you're doing and what you need to do to other people to help bring them along and for helping them to understand. So I think of it a lot of times where I find it so, I mean, always you have to do storytelling. We are human. Human are always telling stories every day, all day. So storytelling is not a crazy concept, right? That we would do that and we would need to do that with ourselves and with others. But it is so incredibly important the way you share your message and how you share it, and the understanding people can take from that is immensely important. So in my across my career, it's one of the most important things is how you say it, like, and what you put in front of people. And sometimes you can be so, oh, I have all these amazing statistics and I'm this, like, fancy scientist and I could speak to all these amazing things. But if no one's understanding what you're speaking, like you could be talking about curing cancer, but if you're using all these different words or you're just elaborating extensively, let's say, people are not going to capture that, what you want them to receive and understand it in that way.
Mm.
So it's really important the way you're communicating the information that you want out there, certainly, right? And
Mm.
how you do it and really simplifying it. Wow. We can really, including myself, of course, right? I raised my hand. We can overcomplicate so many things as humans. And so, to me, one of the most important parts of storytelling and the avenue it gives you is to simplify your message and have it be understood. And actually, we were talking about that. I can't remember if it was Joanne or who brought that up. We were talking about that earlier, and I was like, yes, it's such a big part is the understand, like, how you're saying or over simplifying things, right? So
getting that across. And I think a really great point is with the storytelling that just kind of jumped to mind as you were sharing this here with us, Ashley. I think storytelling, of course, is something that is always and has always been used, to children. Storytelling to children has been to share information, to bring information to their awareness, into their minds in a way that they understand it. And I think that's probably a good connection that I'm making here from what you've shared. Storytelling, we're telling children a story so that they understand a concept, that they understand something to do or not to do, which is usually what, children's stories, or in olden days anyway, used to be about. And of course, storytelling to clients when you're working with entrepreneurs that that they want to go more towards a vision, then putting that into a story or storytelling way makes so much sense that they can really become engaged, and don't have to pull them along, but you are really bringing them in, immersing them in an idea because of the way a story evolves for them and gets hold in their own mind there. And as somebody said, terminology, professional academic type language is not the way to convey information so that others take it on board when they are not on that way of thinking or way of wording things. So great way how you've explained that and why storytelling is so important to use. Now, you have virtually already given us this information with everything you've shared so far. This whole flexibility of yours to work with clients and brainstorm completely new, different ideas, especially around the vision that the founder, the entrepreneur might think they have, but they haven't been able to put that into words. You bring flexibility there to the table, working with somebody from your own, I would imagine, flexibility of having, for example, traveled so many countries. I mean, you have to be fairly flexible to be able to jump in and out of planes and, filling your next suitcase and changing the type of clothes you take to the next country you're going to. You've already talked about Africa, very different to the US, to Costa Rica, where you are now. So this flexibility, what comes to mind for you to share with us around flexibility, working with somebody in your whole area of enhancing creativity and efficiency for entrepreneurial leaders? What comes to mind is important there around flexibility?
yes, good question, Sigrid. So flexibility, to me, you have to have it. It's part of life. When you're not being flexible, you're getting in the way of the water, right? In the river, you're the big rock, like stopping the river, but we want the river to flow. So how do I move my rocky self out of the way, right? Flexibility is such a key component, and we're not all flexible, including myself. I'm not flexible all this time. I don't always like dealing with change, like you said, Sigrid. Oh, my flight at 2 in the morning got canceled, and now I'm stuck in this country. What am I gonna do? Those things happen, right? And then you gotta be flexible because it is what it is. And what am I gonna do, right? Instead of just staying in it and getting upset about it. So being flexible is such an important part of moving your business forward, because so many businesses really don't move. Like, it feels maybe like they're moving, but they're not, because being flexible is hard, especially when it can be hard for some people, super easy maybe, but especially when you have a large group of people together. That's where it gets really flexible. When you're all connected, trying to be flexible together is so hard. I love change. So I get really excited by change. I like being flexible. I like doing things differently. I like, oh, we were going to do this, but now we're thinking of, now it doesn't make sense. Something we talked about doing 2 months ago might not make sense today, right? That's called being flexible, right? Doing something different. Things are always changing in the world. The one of the only constants that you know is firmly going to happen every moment of every day is change, right? It might not be so big and it might just be a flower blooming, right? But that's change, right? There's always change happening. So when you're not being flexible, you're getting in the way of that change. And when you can kind of instead ride the raft down the river, it's more enjoyable than, being stuck in the middle under the water, I don't know, drowning or something. Like sounds bad. But like that's that kind of like flow of the flexibility is needed in order to bring you kind of to that future vision. Especially in an easier way to get because it's things are going to change always, 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 always something is changing. And if you're not being flexible, what are you doing? You're doing something based on it's something that's not accurate anymore. It's already
Yeah.
changed. It's different. So you have to do something different at the same time, or then maybe your business, you go
Yeah.
out of business or whatever, right? So
It's not going to go anywhere. So that's a
yeah,
really great visual that you've just shared there. If I'm in the boat, I'm going down down the river there. If I get completely soaking wet, well, I just have to be flexible to take that on board because I can't do anything about it anyway. If I got wet, I got wet. So that's a really good visual to think of it in that way. Ashley, it's so exciting talking to you and hearing your area of expertise around enhancing creativity and efficiency in entrepreneurial leadership, and particularly with that focus for leaders, creating vision, being on vision, and helping them on vision. If there was some parting tip or words, I ask you, what comes to mind for you to leave our audience with today on this session around what you do, how you help them? Is there something you want to
yeah.
share?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say, what comes to mind with all the different things that we've talked about today, Sigrid, is to be open to different things, new things. Like that feels like the underlying theme of all the different things we talked about is just being open to something being different or something new. And that's something I work on myself. I'm definitely not here sitting back saying I'm open all the time, Sigrid, and I'm just this flow river of life. But I work on it myself, of course, as well. But when you're open in all these different things we talked about, that's what creates those wonderful opportunities, for yourself personally or for your business, or those solutions or those challenges where you might be in the middle of nowhere in a country that you haven't been to and you have to figure something out, just so many things. So yeah, that would be being open would be the top thing I would kind of speak.
Absolutely being open.
Yeah.
So that's been a really great time with you, talking about what you are doing, Ashley Carroll, Executive Advisor to Entrepreneurial Leaders with Vision. Thank you for leaving and things to think about for today for this session. Thank you.
Thank you.